welcome you to our called meeting for January 30th, 2025. Welcome those that are in the building as well as those that are watching online. And so for the meeting, this meeting's purpose is for the discussion of work sessions. So we'll call that to order, and Madam Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, Mr. Chair, this meeting was requested for the board members to talk about operations and the implementation of work sessions. So with that said, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
So we're ready for any comment.
I'd like to offer a piece of information if I could. I am for some meetings, work sessions. And saying that, when we did have work sessions, we went over the agenda. Come Thursday, we had done the same thing again. My reasoning for wanting a work session is sometimes there is a question or something like that comes up, and I'd like to know what Robert thinks, I'd like to know what Ashley thinks, and I'd like to know what Mr. Bourne thinks and Mr. Cole. That is where I think that we need to have a meeting prior to our regular meeting. And that way, when I look into Miss Ashley's eyes, I can tell where she's coming from and things like that, where I can't do it over the telephone, you know. Yep. So that's my reasoning that I'd like to have when it's needed. We don't need one all the time, because when we had those, we go over the same thing on Tuesday. Come Thursday, we go over the same thing. It lasted just as long if you had a workshop as you did not. So trying to shorten our meeting, we can talk about what we need to talk about at the meeting, but it's just certain things that I think we need to be together as a group to discuss. You know, I always tell people, and this has been my thing ever since I've been on the board, I think I've got the best solution until I hear 4 more. And I've always thought that. And I'll always think that. So that's my comment.
I'll go next. I think we're probably all in agreement that a work session or call meeting, whatever we want to call it, is necessary. I think the debate is more along the lines of the time and or the frequency. So I'll tell you why I think whether you call it a call meeting, you can do action items, and a work session is non-action. It's really the separation of those two. But I think the purpose of having those scheduled in each board meeting, so in other words, prior to the regular scheduled board meeting each month, is we obviously want to be time efficient. Kind of spoke on this last time. So the difference of those two things is, like, for time, we're averaging probably about 2 hours regardless. So when you separate it, let's say we call it a work session and we have 20 agenda items. So we all are putting in 2 hours, these guys and us and the superintendent. So if you have a work session, in that work session, you're getting done all of your non-action items. So that would be discussion from Mr. Danner or discussion from Dr. Ruth, whoever it is that's doing the discussions. We can get that squared up. Any further discussion on any other topic, getting that squared up. And if we have an executive session, getting that squared up. So yeah, it would be, you definitely don't want to do a repeat. Like, we're going to go over every 20 agenda item and then come back in and do it again. That's crazy. That's actually the opposite of time efficiency. So we're talking about getting X amount of items squared up, or executive session squared up, which is also public, so the public has the option to come, of course, and some will want to, but your directors are not here for both. Necessarily your parents, parent recognition, all those people are not there for both. You're giving people an option, and we're getting that work done prior to the actual regularly scheduled meeting, if that makes sense. So it's not going to be longer. In hindsight, for the public and for your principals and those people coming in, it's actually going to be much shorter on their end. So it'd be like if I'm a principal or football gets recognized and those football parents are here, maybe they want to stay, and we want more parents in here. So if I'm a parent And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm gonna go sit through 2 hours of a board meeting, and some of that stuff I'm not interested in. I mean, I hope you are, but that's just a fact, probably not. Or I could sit through a 45-minute meeting and get all the meat and potatoes in there. That is going to encourage way more participation from the community and hopefully our staff, if that makes sense. It's actually putting the work more on us and less on the community as far as coming in and sitting through it. Does that make sense?
Somewhat, because the whole idea you first talked about a session was to be more transparent. So who are we being transparent to? If nobody's here or if nobody's watching, who are we being transparent to? So time efficiency for me is 21 agenda items last month would have been an hour. We ended up being here 2 hours. That communication that we're discussing here is not with the public, but with me and you,
Yeah.
and you and him, and so as to do that and fulfill that purpose, I'm not against work sessions. I'm against that every single month, because there's sometimes that would just be here spotting out a time so we could start the regular meeting. So as awful as this sounds, I'd still want to be able to control the time at my workplace so that I'm there making money before I come here. This is important to me, but it's also important that I get that done so I can facilitate this as well.
Yeah, understandable, and we all have jobs that we're coming from.
Right.
But, you know, and we all have a different 2 cents on that, but for me, it's just one time a month I'm having a schedule. And the time is something that we would have to, obviously all agree on, but I think there's just confusion on what they actually look like. And if you haven't seen it, go down. If you haven't seen a school system do it well, on whether it be a called or a called meeting or a work session versus a regular meeting, if you've seen it smoothly ran, it's like, wow, it's eye-opening how efficient it is. And transparencies, you know, of course, the same people are usually in here, and then a lot of people are watching online.
Right.
But it's just however you kind of want to look at it.
Well, that's a perspective part of it, is the fact that we just had a gentleman say that he ran his superintendent board a certain way, which some said, you know, Corey said, you know, I don't know. But for him, that worked excellent for him. I don't know the way you're talking about. I know 2 ways. And one was where we came in the morning, did the same thing for 2 hours, and they were 35 agenda items, and then we turned around and did that again, versus doing it from a video that I'm able to do that and then correspond with you guys to say, hey, do you have any questions, so that when we get here, we can debate that in the regular session, and if we can knock it out in an hour, we're done.
As we come together as a board, could we have flexibility and do an agreement that we would try X, Y, and Z different ways, and then come back together with what works best for us collectively as a whole? That's the only way I know to do it. This is all I know.
I'd like your
I've seen other
input.
stuff, but I've not.
I would like your input on what she's talking about the principals, because when I've been here, every work session, we've had them there. So I need your perspective
My input
on Miss Ashley's about directors and principals being here.
I wouldn't expect principals to be here, but I would expect directors to be here, because I am not an encyclopedia and I wouldn't be able to answer some of the questions. I would be afraid I wouldn't be able to answer some of the questions.
Right.
So I would require directors.
And your directors are usually the ones that are presenting as well.
Yes, it usually comes from their department. It's something that I need to get my head wrapped around. I do think that the way that Fannin used to do it, all the way back from Mark and everything, I don't think that was the intent. And I only know that because I've been researching this since it came up. I don't think it's intended to be a dress rehearsal. And I can't remember, you said a few minutes ago, like action items on one and the other stuff on the other. I don't think anything can be a cut and like a hard and fast rule. I think we would look at it and decide to put some things on a work session and then some things on the regular agenda. This is an example, and I'm only saying, my brain has kind of been trying to process this in the background since it came up, which the video, for me, I mean, y'all, it works great on me, but the meetings are not mine. The meetings 100% belong to the board. It's my responsibility to get done what y'all want, but these are yours. I don't see not doing the video for two reasons. One, it forces me to close my door one time a month, slow down, and by golly, I better know everything on that agenda inside and out before I make a recommendation to you all. And that's an expectation I have for myself. And I think giving y'all time to look at it and reflect when you can and then come up with your questions is appropriate. So I wouldn't say do away with that. If we go with work sessions, and there's two different ways I'd like to look at doing it. One may work and one may not, but let me back up first. Okay, I sent y'all the email that we have an elementary school that's on the TSI list. Part of the requirements of being on the TSI list is that Connie and Mark will have to do a presentation to the board. It's gonna be long, and it's not gonna be the most entertaining event that and I don't mean that wrong, Connie. I mean, it's not gonna be like the fun stuff and the kids are doing and all that stuff. It's gonna be like data, and I know you have to have data, Lucas, I get it, but I'm all about, you know, more of the kid thing. That could be something that would still be advertised on a work session if we do it a called meeting, because I'd have to itemize everything that we talked about so people could come, but she could present that to you all at that time. I would not recommend approving stuff at a called session and removing it and moving it to the consent agenda unless it was so routine and small, because that's when I think that you might lose the transparency, but you may not have to have that much conversation. I know that there's a lot of call for right before the meeting. That I don't have my head wrapped around it, but I'm willing to try anything now that we have the policy that Robert's Rules of Orders can't undo any business of the board. That's my favorite policy, by the way. I don't know how that would work. I'm willing to try it because I'm willing to, if we all goof up, I know that we goof up together, and it may be something great. I wouldn't mind trying it a day or two before meeting too. That way, especially if it's something big, like say for example, if we hadn't had this opportunity for the GDOT thing or something like that, that would have been something I'd like to have done a few days before a meeting, and that way if y'all wanted to do a site visit, you'd have time to actually go out there and look at it to see what, you know, you wanted to do. So do I think that you five and me, do we need more opportunity to have real conversations? Absolutely. But it's, like Mr. B just said, looking somebody in the eye will help me when, and we follow the rules. I only call one at a time, but no matter how hard I try, and I even make an agenda when I do like phone calls so that I'll tell y'all the same, you know, talk about the same thing, but it's never the same conversation. No matter, it's just like when you teach the same lesson plans to two different groups of kids. It can be the same lesson plan, but it doesn't turn out, you know, different questions are asked. So I always feel like I'm not giving everybody the same exact information at one time. Do we need to do that on everything? No. I mean, on big things, like when we're getting into the GMP and we start looking down the road at this doggone CTAE, I don't want that monkey on my back by myself. Y'all in there with me. So that's kind of my perspective. Now, do I know how to do it? No. Do I know how to do most stuff right out of the gate? No, but we figure it out. So that's just me in a nutshell.
That's kind of the beauty of it. It's new. I mean, that's why we're here talking about it. It's not something anybody's going to know definitively on what to do. And it's everything you do in your life is a learning curve. So it's all trial and error. So, you know, and this isn't really reinventing a wheel. This is taking what we already do from month to month and looking at that. When Mr. Cole and yourself sit down and plan the agenda, it would be a situation where you're like, you have that flexibility to say, hey, this is some long discussions that Mr. Danner's gonna put up, or whatever, and we're gonna slide this in the work session, we're gonna talk about it here. Or, hey, we know we got executive session, it's gonna last, I don't know, 45 minutes, we're gonna put this here, so that when people choose to come into a public meeting, we're bragging on the kids, we're bragging on our faculty members, you know, we're doing the things that honestly are just the most interesting, and we're taking those action items, we're voting. But I think, I mean, just public input on this as well is, you know, some of the things you hear from people is it's just so cut and paste, you know, so it's like it separates. So like, if I go to a different school system's board meeting and I see on their agenda, hey, at 5 o'clock they've got a work session, and at 7 they've got their regular meeting, and it gives me the option. And then I've done that. Okay, I want to see what their work session looks like. Someone go at 5. Okay, well, I really just want to see their regular meeting, so I've went at 7. So it just gives people options on what part of the meeting they're wanting to attend. So it essentially, it's not changing anything, or really, like I said, reinventing anything. It's just giving more flexibility to the board and to you, and more flexibility. It's not lengthening the overall time. It's actually just separating it into 2 sections, really.
Well, and being 100% transparent, when it first come up, I wasn't for it. I wasn't for it for many reasons. One, I had my routine down, and I was methodically doing it, and I thought, well, this works, why not? I did make myself research it, and there's some ways that people do it, and I'm like, oh Lord, that would
Yeah,
never work
I've
for
seen some
us.
hard
And then
no's.
some that I'm like,
Yeah.
I could pull some of it out. But would I want to set anything right now, like us obligated with no flexibility? No, because I think we've got to know one another and how we need to work. So, but I'm hushing now. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see, before we make anything in stone, try different options. There are plenty of options available to try those things. Do it different next month, do it different. What I'm saying by that, our regular board meeting starts at 5:30. We put that in there already. So we could try it out, do it at 4:30 for a work session, whatever, try that way, and I'm just soundboarding. I'm not against either way. You know what I'm saying? I'm for whatever is better for our school system, but let's try those ways before we cut that out. We could talk what Justin taught. We could try it, see what it does, and just take 2 or 3 months, try a few different things, see how that works before we change it. We got one shot, you know, for this year.
February would lend itself to having a work session right before, due to the fact that I need to request an executive session. So that would lend itself, and it needs to be in close proximity to the meeting. I don't know, like that's the only, as I'm thinking of that, that's the only place I've got to so far. I have not looked at March yet, at the structure of it. So. And then we had the opportunity for y'all to have the strategic plan today to see the other big one, which was the facilities thing at West Vanna. That would have been another one that I would have chosen to have discussed at work session.
I mean, if we can do it that way, to where we just come back in February and do it a trial run, that'd be great. I actually didn't realize that was an option versus just deciding.
Well, if we do it as a called meeting, we can do it. We can do some trial in there.
That's what I'm talking.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that'd be an option there. Just do a called meeting instead of a work session, and we
And
can
use it as a work session.
Use it as a work session. We can make decisions during that as well, and it's nothing that's saving us time. Period. We got to put in the same amount of time either
Absolutely.
way. It's just giving everybody else a little more
I'll need some
flexibility and
time.
all. And one thing I noticed for me is, like in the meeting, like we come in, we recognize our academics or our sports or something, and then they're gone. You know what I mean? I'd like to see that possibly moved into if we're doing a meeting with just those things, move that to the end. That way they get some of the meat and potatoes of the meeting, if it's going to be a shorter meeting. You know, because I really want those people that are in here to be a part of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it seems like we do that, and then it's the
They're
same
gone.
crowd from then on every single month. So maybe that might pull them into being a little more involved, which is what I want. I want more community involvement. So maybe if our meetings were shortened because of this, then we do that at the end. We get all the other stuff done and then do our recognition, and we're good, or something like that. I don't know, that's the thought.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I'm all for a call meeting, work session, whatever. If it's one time a month and I have to come in here at 4 o'clock and then the regular meeting at 5:30, I'm okay with that. I'm real flexible. So from my standpoint, I'll be very flexible and willing to try whatever y'all want to try and make it work, because I want to force y'all to sit down with me a little extra every month
Right?
and look me in the face. So no, I'm all good with whatever y'all want to do.
Yeah.
As long as we're working for the community and working for our kids and working for our staff, I'm all on board. So that's all I got to say about it.
I like the idea of it as well, and I don't know that we would need to do it every month. So maybe the trial, maybe a couple call meetings would be necessary for us to fill it out and see how this works for us.
Yeah, I think that what all y'all said so good, because and the beauty of having different 2 cents about it, and I'd imagine it would be super scary if I haven't saw it. Anything I haven't saw in action, I'm immediately like, oh God, I don't know if I want to do this or not. So I think seeing in action, because I think that's where you're going to form your opinion on whether it needs to be regular or not. Because if our goal here is to do discussion or non-action items in executive session, in work session, whatever you call it, then if that is our goal and that's what we like and that's what looks good, it feels good with everybody once you see it in action, I think, in my personal opinion, I think you're going to think, oh man, we probably should do this each board meeting, because there's always going to be discussion items. There's always going to be presentations or non-action items, right? And there's going to periodically be executive session. There's always going to be room for it, and that room for it will always shorten the public set. Even if your work session only has 5 agenda items, and like y'all are getting tired of me saying this, I'm sure, but I'm time based. Everything in my whole career bases off an hour. So literally, whether I was a teacher or whether I'm doing what I'm doing now, it's always been within an hour time period. So I feel like I'm pretty solid, bang up job person at the hour mark. So if we can, shorten that public meeting up, anything we can do to shorten that and put it in a prior spot is going to look smooth, and it's going to work smooth, and it's going to give us the opportunity to get in here and get things done.
One thing that caught my attention is what the in our earlier training, the attorney said is he's been to them where they flow through, and it's he's been to a lot. He said
Right.
he's been to hundreds of different places. I've only been to 3. You know what I mean? And so that really caught my attention, that he said it worked well and flowed well. So that's when I was pretty much like, yeah, let's do whatever we got to do to make it happen.
Right.
So what do y'all want to do?
I want to, and it doesn't need board action, but it's a commitment that I'll make publicly and verbally to you all, that we will, starting with February, that we will start doing called meetings to operate as a work session until we discover the consistent flow that we need as a board. And that could be anything from leaving it to just called as needed, like we've been told, all the way to going ahead and setting it on paper. And it could be anywhere in between, but I don't think that we can answer that until we try it. Am I scared? Yeah, and Lord, I got all them
Scared's good.
watching, So-
Well, I appreciate you committing to that, and I appreciate those of you that have to come to commit to it. I hope it doesn't cause any undue burden on your schedules, but I just think it's helpful for those of us who are freshmen at this, helpful for us to get our feet under us and fill it out,
Right.
and learn the process a little more. And I think it'll be helpful for us to at least give it a shot and see how it
Right.
works.
The beauty of a call meeting is, unless it's a catastrophe, like a school being blown away or something, and y'all have to make an immediate decision, we have to do 24-hour notice. Stephanie and I can whip that out in a minute. She sends it to Glenn, puts it on the door, and it's considered posted. So with the call meeting, we can do it with that much flexibility.
Right.
And like, I can go ahead and commit to y'all to doing one before the meeting in February, since we have that executive session, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you're gonna have to be patient with me if I get the right thing on the right, agendas. But, and it doesn't have to be just one to use as a work session as well. As we're going through this process to learn, I mean, all you have to do is, reach out, board chair, me, if somebody wants to have a meeting, you just say it, and then we can call a meeting. We just have to have 24 hours. So, and we just have to have whatever we're gonna discuss on the agenda. That's one thing with the call meetings. Everything has to be on that agenda that we discuss. But there can be a consistent update also given during a work session.
That brings up another point. We got a lot of things coming down the line too that this is gonna be good for too, cause there'll be a lot of discussion in it.
Oh, yeah.
So, a lot of great things that I'm very, very excited about,
Yeah.
so.
And I thought about that too, before I forget. You had mentioned the videos earlier, and then, and we had talked about that. The videos are awesome. I mean, because it is, like you said, it's very personal, and it explains each one, so that that should give us the time period to be asking those questions, correct? So that's perfect, and that's a super good idea. And also, you know, like if we do this for February, also, when you put the video out and then we talk with you, it'd be a situation where we're like, okay, well, let's look at it. And that's where that freedom of play comes in. So it's hard to talk about something when it's not sitting in front of you, right? So we've got this draft agenda, we're sitting here looking at it, and you've went over it already, and then we're gonna be like, hey, Mr. Cole, what you think about putting this? This is something that'll be good to put here. And so you have that flexibility. It's not this stone thing that we're thinking about. And I again, I know new things are difficult. They're difficult for myself as well. Definitely, you know, they're hard. So it's not a stone structure. And I think as we play with it, like you all have said already, then we're like, okay, and then that's where that flow starts happening.
Find
Okay,
what works.
what works. This kind of works good when we put it here and this, and then you're getting feedback, you know, because right now it's new for everyone. And then you guys that are out there, the directors and the community and the staff are like, oh my gosh, that's working so good. Or, no, that's not working so well. And that's where we can kind of start piecing it
Adjust it.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the, I mean, you talking about your hour, how you're associated, that's what I do in my secular job, I sell time.
Yeah.
You know, so as the service manual tells me, this is how you take the transmission out, but after I've done it for 40 years, there are things it tells me to do that I don't have to do, and I can make up time,
Yeah.
right? So I'm always looking, how can I
Yeah.
get that?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to shortcut the job, I'm just trying to
Just
save the
easier ways,
time.
yeah.
So that's all I'm saying. If we could test run some things, because once we test run it, we'll say, oh, that
worked.
don't work. Let's scratch
Yeah.
that.
Cost me
Let's
more
try,
time, yeah.
let's try this one.
Yeah.
And that's before we set anything in stone.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Just
Yeah.
give it a trial run.
Yep,
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's smart. But I think it's smart to start trying soon. That's
Yeah,
why I
like-
like the idea of February.
Every month.
Yeah, just
try
hit the
to do
ground
something,
running
yeah.
and start trying this thing, because the sooner we try, the sooner we get it correct.
Okay.
Okay, our regular scheduled meeting for February is the second Thursday, starting at 5:30 to call to order. I need some suggestions on when to back it up to do a called meeting.
You need some time suggestions?
Yeah, like, do we need an hour for the,
That's a
and
bit-
we can, you know,
We definitely have DOT on the agenda.
correct.
Okay.
Yes,
That
I
are
will
things
put
you
that.
wanted to discuss. That is one thing. There is executive session that you want to know. Is there a time frame of your expectancy for those two items?
I might need 45 minutes. So I back it up an hour unless y'all think it's going to, because we can always have time between, like we did earlier, between the training and the call meeting.
And even in that, if we had to adjourn executive session, we can always come out and go back in.
Correct.
If our time
If our
runs short.
time was
before
to
the board
run
meeting
short
starts.
before we, yeah,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
could always come out, do our board meeting, continue that at the end just to finish up any finalized. And that's gonna get our feet wet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's the way it'll always run.
Yeah.
We're suspicious of 1 hour being the time limit.
Yes.
Why don't we
Yes,
do
if
the
I
first
needed
one
more-
at
huh?
4, why don't we just do the first one at 4 o'clock, see how it goes for the first time, and that might give us a few minutes between that called meeting and the next meeting for people to get in and get set up and all as well.
How does-
Y'all just have to help me if we ended up needing to talk more in executive session, we closed, we came out for the regular meeting, somebody would have to make a motion to amend the agenda to add or to call to go into executive
Absolutely.
session.
Mhm.
So I will forget. I'll get nervous and forget, so y'all would have to help
From
me
a-
remember.
From a 4 o'clock perspective, how does that fit with those who have to be here?
They're here until 4.
Okay, all right.
It'll cut into them running to get a
Getting a thumbs up.
Starbucks. No, I'm
We're
just
getting
kidding.
a
I'm
thu-
messing
we're
with
getting a thumbs up
that.
from the crowd.
Oh, yeah,
I know
but-
what he
well,
wants. He
I would-
wants
I
earlier
would-
the
We're
better.
getting this, we're getting this number.
Yeah, well, Chris will be excused because his buses won't be cleared until
Okay.
then. So we just leave a gentleman's agreement for you to come in after. Well, principals don't have to come to work sessions.
I mean, I would anticipate an hour, but maybe because we do have
Maybe play.
some
that
things to
play
talk
with
about in February, maybe start at 4 o'clock in February.
Okay.
Let's just see.
That's the cool
Alrighty.
thing about it, it's flexible.
See, we got this.
Any other discussion?
I don't have any, Mr. Chair.
I'm good.
We're good.
Good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is
So
there a
moved.
second? Second?
Second.
All in favor by raised hand. It is unanimous. We are adjourned.
You get